Okay, what's the problem there?
I don't know. A couple of guys came up and beat on the door, and I went out and looked, and there's some blood on the door, it looks like.
Okay, can you see him down the street at all?
There looks like something's going on in the house across the street.
Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Wine, Crime, and Murder Mystery. And I am Donielle, and today we will not be having wine because I'm doing this video very early in the morning. And although I could pretend that I'm drinking wine and it's later in the day, I didn't want to. But today we will be having some coffee. So I have my Mrs. Claus mug and I will be having a little sip of coffee. So I hope that you'll join me during my coffee time. So today there is a story that I want to bring to you that occurred in Boise, Idaho. Now, if you are from Boise, Idaho or have visited there is a great chance that you have heard about this story. What they call it, the murder house. It's the Liden Horror House, or recently I read somewhere where they call it the Chop Chop House. Why are they calling it the Chop Chop House? There are numerous rumors regarding this house that goes back decades, and you know that once a story happens, it gets more elaborate and more elaborate as time goes on. I'm going to tell you about a few of the rumors that occurred. One of the rumors is that a crazed murderer murdered numerous people and chopped them up in this particular house. Another rumor is that this particular home had been used as the university's frat house, and so the frat members would tell the stories of blood coming down the walls in this house in the basement. Also, there is a rumor that there's an apparition of a woman from the 19th century in, old clothes that, roams the house. No matter whatever the rumor may be or what you believe, there is one thing that reigns true about this house, is that a gruesome murder occurred there. So, let's begin. It is June the 29th of 1987, and Preston Murr attended a funeral with a small group of others. At this funeral, there was a confrontation. A fight broke out between Murr and two other people. The police were called, and Murr and the two individuals were charged with unruly conduct or disrupting the peace, something to that extent. Later that evening, Murr called the police and told them that he was staying with his sister along with his girlfriend at his sister's house, and that someone had called and threatened to kill him. Murr made a call to his friend Daniel Rogers and told him that someone had called and made a threatening message to him, and he called him to see if, maybe he knew something about it, if he knew who it was who had been making these threatening phone calls to him. So once he got off the phone, I guess the conversation between Murr and Rogers was that they were going to meet up. So they met up at a Circle K gas station, and Rogers had brought Daron Cox with him. And when Rogers and Cox arrived at the Circle K, Murr was on a phone call talking to his sister, kind of telling him what was going on, and he had a bat in his hand. I'm sure he was scared for his life. Someone threatened him, so he had a bat that he was going to use for protection. Just kind of discussing the phone calls, and so Rogers, Cox, and Murr drove back to Murr's sister house, and they're talking about what's happening, who it could be, trying to figure it out. They shortly after that, the three of them left and they went back to Rogers' house at 805 Liden Street. Now, once they got to Rogers' house, which they went to Rogers' house to obtain Rogers' gun, but in the process, the focus of their investigation changed. The focus changed to trying to find the guns, some guns that had been stolen for Rogers. I'm not exactly sure what changed in the process of how did it go from Murr being threatened to killed and figuring out who that was to trying to locate Rogers' stolen gun. But neither here nor there. Murr had told Rogers he knew where the apartment was where he believed Rogers' guns were. So they drove around for hours and hours looking for Rogers' guns. The trio, the three of them, return after not being successful in finding these guns. They return to Rogers' apartment. And it's not really noted what happened in this apartment or what caused the altercation, but an altercation broke out at this home. And from this altercation, Murr was shot in the shoulder. And once he was shot, he ran out of the house and up the street and was pounding on a bunch of neighbors' houses trying to allow them to let him in or to call the police. He went to one neighbor's house and he was banging and banging, and the neighbor was there and he heard this, but he was scared because he had heard him say, "Let me go, don't leave me alone, don't touch me." And so he was scared for his own safety, so he did not open his door. But he silently watched out of the window, and he said that he saw two individuals chasing Murr down the street, and then they apprehended him and pulled him back to the house at 805 Liden Street.
Bleeding profusely, Murr ran outside to a neighbor's home, pounding and smearing blood on the front door while telling his attackers to let him go. The neighbor called 911 and witnessed a man being dragged back into the home.
Okay, what's the problem there?
I don't know. A couple of guys came up and beat on the door, and I went out and looked, and there's some blood on the door, it looks like.
Okay, can you see him down the street at all?
There looks like something's going on in the house across the street.
And he called the police and asked the police, kind of told the police what he had heard and what he had saw, and he waited for them to show up, but they never came. When they took Murr back to the house, based on, what the neighbor accounts were, but when they took him back to the house, Murr was shot in the head and killed. Rogers and Cox decided that they needed to get rid of this body. They cut Murr's body into tiny pieces with an axe and knives, and they put all his body parts into a plastic bag. And they placed the bag in the vehicle, which was a Grand Prix that was owned by Rogers' wife, and they drove him to Brownlee Reservoir to dump off some of the body parts. The body parts that did not sink, they took to a bluff where they discarded those there. They took all their clothes, they took the plastic bags and their gloves and everything, and they dumped those in the dumpster. Ugh, pretty gruesome. Like, who can chop up a body? I don't know. Not funny, but it's gross. It's scary. It just makes you wonder the mind of a person that could do something like that. The next morning, the neighbor had saw a brown sedan that had drove up, stopped right at his house and stopped, and then slowly took off. And so this kind of freaked the neighbor out because the night before, someone had been knocking on his door. It was almost like they were trying to see if he saw or knew anything. So they had knocked on his door. And so it prompted the neighbor, after seeing the sedan and seeing the blood on his door from Murr, it prompted him to call the police again. This time the police came out, and when they came, they saw the blood that was on his door. They also found blood on the property of other neighbors. They saw it in the street of the property leading up to the 805 Liden Street property. And so they had to get a search warrant before they entered the house. So once they got it, prior to them getting, they had to block off the street, like since there was so much blood in other areas of the street, they had to block off to do a full investigation. And so they had to get the search warrant. Once they got the search warrant, they entered the house. When they entered the house, they found even more blood. They found money, they found drugs, and they found one of Roger's guns.
Police say Murr was forced back into the basement and shot in the head by Daniel Rogers. Court documents also tell us it was Daron Cox who helped Rogers dismember Preston's body to cover the crime.
Rogers and his wife was arrested on the 30th for possession of drugs with the intent to deliver a controlled substance. A few days later, they discovered Murr's body along the reservoir bank, and they arrested Rogers and Cox for the murder of Murr. Cox would become their informant and kind of tell them all of the gruesome details of that night where he put all of the blame on Rogers. He stated that the only reason why he helped cut up the body was because he feared for his own life. When they went to trial, they gave a separate trial for Cox and Rogers. And Rogers' trial was first. And he testified in his own trial. Now, prior to his trial, he never admitted to the murders or even being at the place. It wasn't until his trial that he admitted that. And Cox did not testify in Rogers' trial because he had pleaded the Fifth Amendment. He didn't want to incriminate himself for his own trial. At the trial, Rogers stated that a fight broke out between Murr and Cox, and that Murr had came at Rogers with a knife, and Rogers had shot a warning shot off. But then Murr still continued and wanted to come at him, and so he shot him in the arm. He said that Murr ran up the stairs and out the door, and that Cox went out to grab him and pull him back. But remember, the neighbor said that he saw two people. But this is Rogers' story that he gave at the trial. Rogers stated that he was upstairs when he heard the final shot that was made to Murr's head, and that after it was done, Cox came in, told him what he had done, and told him about his plans to dispose of the body. Rogers also testified that he did not help and could not have helped with the dismemberment of the body, but he did help with the cleanup and the disposal. Wow. I couldn't have helped with that either. Not funny again. Really sad. Due to the fact that Cox cooperated with the cops, he got a smaller sentence of 6 years as an accomplice to murder. Rogers, however, was convicted of murder and is serving a fixed life sentence at the Idaho Correctional Center. As early as 2005, he was denied parole. But what I find interesting about Rogers and Cox, one, I feel, and this is just my opinion, that Cox, whether he cooperated or not, he should have also been given the same, very similar sentence as Rogers. I don't think after 6 years he should have necessarily been able to get out. I didn't find any information about where he is and what he's doing today, but that's just my little tidbit. But I hope that after he did get out, that he changed his life and he is living a much different life today than the one he lived previously. I didn't mention this in the beginning, but Preston Murr was only 21 years old at his time of death. and he had a lot of more years to live. I don't know the type of person that he was, but he still had a longer life to live. When Rogers was convicted, the district court noted that, let me put this down, that Mr. Rogers was a dangerous person and that he should never be let out on parole, but that with being in a correctional facility, then he could be controlled in a prison setting. Also, I learned another interesting fact about Rogers, which also kind of adds to the reason why he should be in jail at this moment, because he was also convicted of second-degree murder in 1977 in a case that was very similar to the Murr's case. Rogers had given the victim, the California victim, a ride in his car. Then he ordered the gentleman to get out his car and shot him in the chest. When the guy fell from being shot in his chest, he fell face down. Then Rogers went and put a couple more bullets in the back of his head while he was laying face down on the ground from being shot previously. In that particular case, Rogers had denied any involvement, but later stated that it was self-defense, that he was defending himself. And he pled guilty to second-degree murder. He was released from the California prison system in 1982. So, he was let out only to commit this crime again. Now, there are a lot of people that have lived in this house over the years. After Rogers' conviction, I know he sold the 805 Liden Street property on April the 6th of 1988 to a Mr. Howe. Mr. Howe is still the owner of today. I'm not sure if they have any relation or if he was related to him anyway. I also didn't find if Miss Rogers was still married to Mr. Rogers. I didn't find anything in the divorce records, but that doesn't mean anything because they may not have gotten a divorce in Idaho. So. But I didn't see anything that showed whether she remarried or divorced him or what happened in her case. But this house has had a lot of tenants, a lot of renters over the years. So there hasn't been any one else who owned it besides Mr. Howe, but only they have been renting the house. This is the house today. When I got it off of the property appraiser's office website is what it looks like. I'm not sure if that's what it looks like at this very moment, but based on the picture on the property appraiser's office, this is what it looks like today. And over the years, the people who have lived in this house have always felt like that something was eerie about it.
I really don't feel that I was never afraid or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories. I mean, everybody's convinced that it is.
Every once in a while you get that one person it's this house? No, I'm not going in there. No, I'm not going.
It looks like a feral animal, like something really pretty, but no one wants to go near it.
What you know about what happened and what took place, how does it feel being in there?
It feels like it's somebody else's place. Like you've got this uneasy feeling about it.
Murr's death created a haunted legend. This two-story structure is now known as the murder house, drawing attention from visitors all over. Something Deanne Davis and her daughters are all too familiar with.
A lot of people are very afraid of that house, and some swear it is haunted. And I've had so many people come by and want tours of that house.
Based on all of the rumors, one, we know that Rogers was not a madman that chopped up multiple people in this house. I also read somewhere that it being a frat house at one time was not true. No one else has ever mentioned also seeing this ghostly apparition of this woman. But there is one thing for sure, of all of the people who have lived in this house over the years, there have been plenty. A lot of them would state that they felt like the house did not belong to them, that especially in the basement, that something was a little dark and unsettling. No ghost or anything like that have been reported, but even people who walk by get a strange feeling about the house. Now, the house was built in the 1800s. Definitely could have had some ghostly apparitions over the time, but from this story, it seems as though a lot of the rumors that have, or what they call them, urban legends that have been said about this house isn't true. Thank you, and I hope to see you again next week. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave comments if there's a story you would like to see me talk about or research. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you and have a blessed day.